But when you look at a lot of the sweets and the traditional sweets and the cooking, those are the ingredients that you find. For example, the ingredients of the Swedish almond cake is a very, very simple type of cake. It basically has sugar, egg, milk, almond extract, flour, baking powder, and then melted butter. Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast. Recently, I put a new recipe up on my blog, A Bus on a Dusty Road, and it was a recipe for a Swedish almond cake. This is a recipe that our family has made for many years. It's one of our favorite recipes. It's a very, very simple recipe to make. As I was making the recipe, it kind of got me thinking about a few things, and among one was, where did almonds come from? Almonds are not grown in Scandinavia. But yet when you look at a lot of the Scandinavian baked good, the almond Danish that you can buy, or, even from France, almond croissants. Sweden has a lot of almond extract, a lot of almonds that they use in their own baked goods. It got me thinking, well, when did almonds make their way up to Scandinavia? Almonds, it's quite a fascinating thing to learn about almonds because almonds have made a fascinating journey around the world. They're really at the heart of a lot of the Swedish or Scandinavian baked goods, but yet they're not something that you can find or go into your backyard and find. It was during the Roman Empire, about 100 AD, that almonds were used as a fertility charm for newlyweds. It was customary to shower them with almonds, similar to modern traditions of giving sugared almonds in North America. There's also, between the 6th and 7th century AD, almond trees thrived in regions such as Spain, Morocco, Greece, and Israel. And these areas became hubs of almond cultivations and harvests, played a pivotal role. They're saying that almonds probably traveled along the Silk Road, to China, from Spain, that they started traveling around the world. Many explorers would travel, not just, they wouldn't just bring goods, but they'd be plants. They would, people would, come move to another part of the world. They wanted to bring things that they're familiar with, things that they liked. And one of these things probably was the almonds. It's plausible that during this period, explorers and traders that they saw this almond nut tree. Maybe even the Vikings did. The Vikings that were traveling down into some parts of the Middle East. Seen the almond tree. They may have tasted the almond, and it may have been something they wanted to bring back. It was in the 8th century Franciscan padres introduced almond trees to Spain, from Spain to California, and now, of course, California is one of the largest producers of almonds. We also know that in 1890 that Vincent van Gogh painted his beloved almond blossoms. And he painted this almond blossom actually for his nephew, who was also named Vincent van Gogh, but was the son of his brother Theo. And he painted as a gift for the birth of his nephew. But we know that as he painted this, where he lived in southern France, there had to be some almond blossoms down there because he was able to paint these almond blossoms. So we know that, almond blossoms must have reached at least southern France, even though if they didn't get much higher, because it would be difficult due to the climate for them to be able to survive in the very cold climates. So we don't really know the exact path of how almonds got to Scandinavia or how almonds became such an important part of Scandinavian cuisine, especially baked goods, except we do know that almonds and all things with almonds is extremely popular in Scandinavia, especially in baked goods. That's why, almonds continue to play a prominent role in Scandinavian recipes. That's what's really interesting about this almond cake recipe that I did, and basically about it in general when you start thinking about food. And one of the aspects of food, and one reason why I love food, and we put food into our blog, is because food has so much to do with the culture of the world. That, cultures are really influenced by the foods that they eat. And actually, food is something which has traveled around the world. That it's something which one explorer has maybe brought it to one part of the world, and then suddenly now it becomes something which everybody's starting to eat. And so, really, food is something which has traveled all around the world, and almonds is sort of the example of that. Almond extract, almond paste, marzipan is not a plant which is native, particularly to Europe. But when you look at a lot of the sweets and the traditional sweets and the cooking, those are the ingredients that you find. For example, the ingredients of the Swedish almond cake is a very, very simple type of cake. It basically has sugar, egg, milk, almond extract, flour, baking powder, and then melted butter. That's really all that it has, are those few ingredients. When you think about this cake, that's really all that it has. You suppose that, sugar, of course, would have been brought into Sweden from somewhere, because sugar cane was not something which they would have had there traditionally. Eggs, they, of course, would have had because of chicken. Milk, they would have had because of the cows. Almond extract would have had to be something that was brought in from somewhere else. Flour, they would have had because of the wheat. Baking powder, I don't know when baking powder exactly was invented, so it probably was not something they've had for a long period of time. And of course, the butter they would have had. So, you look at all of these things for this very simple yet basic Swedish almond cake, you can see that how, a lot of these ingredients were not traditionally there, but because they've been brought in from explorers and from other people and from other parts of the world, that now we're able to have this delicious Swedish almond cake because of the fact that almonds were somehow brought into this part of Europe. This really is quite an interesting thing to think about food, and how food has not only affected history, it's affected how people eat, what they eat, and how they're using it. That is why this history of almonds is so interesting. It's so interesting to realize that almonds, which are not traditional to a large part of Europe, have made their way so much into European baked goods that without the almond extract or the almond paste or the marzipan, I am not sure what we would consider to be, Dutch, German, Danish, Swedish, Finnish, Norwegian, because these are such essential ingredients. Even things like ginger, which had to be brought in from somewhere else, from the ginger plant. Those are all things that had been imported that would have made a difference into the foods that we have today. That is why food is such an important part of our international life, our international world. And when you start understanding and begin to think about the foods, and you begin to think about where things came from, then it just opens up your eyes to this great and glorious world that we live in. That is why we at the Dusty Roads podcast and at our blog, A Bus on a Dusty Road, are all about living our lives as a global citizen. And part of that is to be able to understand the world and understand more about the world. And that's one of the reasons why we do these recipes, and we try to learn things about other parts of the world and other foods and cultures that other people eat. If you'd like to be able to check out the Swedish almond cake recipe, we'll put a link below into our podcast. You can try it. It's a very easy recipe to try. Almost anyone can make it. It's very easy. And that we hope that you'll join us and become part of our community. We thank you so much for listening. We thank you for listening to our Dusty Roads and being on the dusty roads of life together with us. Thank you so much.